Hi, everybody. Thank you for showing up to our chat tonight with La Liga North America CEO Boris Gartner. It should be a really cool conversation tonight with one of our members, Erika Fernandez, who a lot of you know. So for those of you who don't know, we are Minorities in Sports Business Network, a national networking org of about 1,000 members across the country, professionals of color who all work in the sports industry. And we're just happy to have you tonight. So with that said, I will turn it over to Erika and Boris, and I will just step aside and let them do their thing. So thank you and enjoy, guys.
And thank you to Shaina for that introduction. Make sure to follow us at Minorities in Sports. And I know I totally just messed up the handles, but search us. Minorities in Sports has been very much around for at least 4 years now, if my memory serves me right. Boris, that beautiful introduction from Shaina. And I think it kind of leads us into my first question. You just made 2 years at La Liga. Congratulations. Has it hit you yet that you're the CEO of La Liga North America, which for those of you who don't know, is also a joint venture between La Liga and Relevant Sports?
So first of all, thank you, Shine and Erika, for having me. Definitely a big fan of what you guys have been doing with Minority in Sports. Actually, I reached out to China a few weeks ago just because I've been seeing more and more what you guys are doing and definitely wanted to get involved. So again, thank you and congratulations.
Beautiful.
And then starting with your question, it's been 2 years. So just taking a step back and to give a little bit of context, La Liga is a Spanish top flight soccer competition. It encompasses first division and second division. First division has 20 teams, including Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, etc. And then second division that has 22 teams, and the league controls both divisions. Just a few numbers to give context. The league has total revenues, or this past season had total revenues of 4.9 billion euros,
Wow.
of which the audiovisual rights, the media rights, exceed 2 billion euros every season. Stadium attendances, for example, there was a combined 14 million people going to the 380 matches that we have on first division plus the second division matches in 2018-19, and it has been constantly growing year over year. Our product is broadcasted across 184 countries by more than 73 broadcasters, and we currently employ between the league and the clubs more than 185,000 people, primarily in Spain, but also internationally. And from a revenue perspective, La Liga represents about 1.4% of Spain's GDP. So that's just to give a little bit of context of the importance and the size of La Liga domestically in Spain. Now, speaking specifically about the international strategy and what we've been doing specifically in North America, as you mentioned, we launched the joint venture in August 2018 with the main purpose of growing the awareness and getting La Liga, its clubs and players closer to the U.S. fans. As you know, the U.S. is the largest media market in the world. So for a league like ours, with in a sport like soccer, it just made sense to have a more permanent and definite presence in the country.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that rundown, because sometimes people think that sports is just what we see on TV, and they don't think about all the sports business side of things, which is obviously what you are head of. So thank you so much for that rundown. And kind of going into that, you're a heavy hitter in the field of sports and super inspirational considering everywhere that you've worked at. Now let's talk about some hardships in your career. What's a time that you had to say no to superiors and just went ahead and followed your gut and did it anyway?
a few different
Putting you on
times.
spot.
No, it's a good question, and most of my career has been kind of focused on what's called entrepreneurship, if you will, trying to build new businesses within larger companies. Had that same experience at Univision when we were building Fusion, which was a joint venture between Univision and the Disney company. But it was a very similar experience, and usually people say entrepreneurship is hard, of course, and you have to hustle and push 10 times harder. But when you're trying to do the same within a big company, I would argue that's also tougher. Yes, you might have the capital and the funding, but the bureaucracy and the red tape are usually harder things to overcome in a certain degree. So both here with La Liga and launching the joint venture, but also and probably more when we were launching Fusion within Univision and Disney. There were a lot of times where you spent a ton of time trying to sell internally what you wanted to do, making it tougher to actually turn around and execute. So that those were sometimes where you had to really stand your ground and understand that what you were doing was disruptive for the core business of those companies. But if you were not disrupting it yourself, then somebody else would come and do it. It's easier said than done. You read it in a ton of different books, and in principle people agree that should be the case. But when you actually have to do it, and there's existing revenue on the line that might be at risk by you taking into new project or a new initiative, people tend to hesitate. So it's not unfounded, but it was definitely an experience.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And it's a good thing that you said the whole standing your ground and giving feedback, because oftentimes in the minorities in sports group chat, we have a lot of members in there, and as China alluded, over 1,000 members. And we often give each other support. So people ask questions like, what do you guys think of this? So it's good that you're also saying that it's good to express your voice and speak volumes as opposed to just staying quiet, because like you just said, someone else could just show the idea, and that's pretty much stolen at that point. Now, it kind of leads into the next question as well. So many people look at our careers, specifically in sports, and think it's glamorous. All they see is us going to these events and thinking that they have tickets, which is an annoying question that we get all the time. If you can get the hookup, and it doesn't work that way. Tell us how you got to where you are today. Did you ever want to give up and come up with a plan B, which I'm sure many of us have?
So we all know that it's not just the glamour, but I have to tell you that personally, I much rather work on in the sports industry than just sitting behind a computer from 9 to 5 doing something else. So yes, it's not all glamour, but it could be worse, right? So it's interesting because I think that personally I get bored quickly. So the times that I moved from one place to another is just because the job becomes just monotonous and not mentally stimulating enough for you to keep on doing it. I don't like personally to sit still and do something or run something that's already working. I find the thrill and the excitement in actually solving problems. And when somebody says, well, actually that can't be done because we've tried, that's actually what gets me going. So yes, a lot of times, that hardship and kind of those starts and stops on different projects can take a toll, but at least I get the energy from that. I think that you really need to be honest and transparent with yourself and know that at the end of the day, it's not just about getting the dream job and having fun, but also thinking about 2 and 5 years down the road, and if what you're doing is actually gonna help you advance in your career and keep on moving or not. I guess it goes with the personality, but that's just kind of my personal take.
Okay, that's a good take. It's not exactly what I was looking for, but you know what? I'm happy that you gave us a little more of a philosophical question as opposed to yes, no, or you're having fun. But it's good to be stimulated and challenged. So speaking of honesty and transparency, often we look at our executive teams and we can't help but notice that there's a lack of minorities on that executive board. What is something that you're doing to ensure that Black and Latino voices are in those rooms?
So I was born and raised in Colombia, moved to the U.S. in 2006, and I've been, as probably everyone watching here, and all of the members at MIS, um, lived firsthand kind of that the issues, not just for you personally and the toll that it takes for us personally, but also the negative impact on a business when you're not actually taking all points of view into account. Um, it's just when the country looks certain way, for you to assume that you're standing up a business or selling a product that's not taking into account the different uh, shades and points of view and everything that the country has. It's unrealistic. I think that, again, just given that I've personally have gone through that and have seen where decisions are not the right ones, basically because you don't have the right people in the room, kind of puts an additional spotlight on the fact that you absolutely need wide representation whenever you're running a business. For me here with in La Liga, it's fairly easier because I of course need more Hispanics. I need more multicultural staff that understands again the type of fan that soccer has here in the country, and just to make sure that we are selling it in the right way. But I actually make a parallel to that. I'm not only wanting to reach Hispanics, first generation, second generation, third generation. I also want to make a connection with the general market and kind of in the intersection of sports and culture. So for me, looking at having representation on the talent side and the executive side of people that understand probably that intersection between culture and soccer better than I might do, it's incredibly important. So we've been putting an additional effort in making sure that we have different voices represented on our content specifically, to make sure that we're connecting in the right way again with the audience that we want to reach. We launched 2 weeks ago, for example, a digital show with Aaron West. A great soccer personality that has done work for multiple networks, but last season he was doing work with Bleacher Report, and he brings that general market view of soccer in the U.S., but also in the intersection with culture. So that has been great for us.
Gotcha. Well, now that you mentioned his name, I think it's a great segue into this question. La Liga has over 2.7 billion fans. So how do you see the outlook of soccer in this country?
It's funny because you start talking about soccer with anyone, and they, the deniers, let's say that well, soccer has been the sport that's almost in the brink of breaking through and making it as a general interest sport, but yet it hasn't. And I do think that when you look at the history of soccer in this country, at least for the past 20, 30 years, it's clear that it's made a ton of progress. And for example, what happened after the '94 World Cup with the launch of the MLS and kind of renewed youth participation in the sport, and now with the 2026 World Cup coming up, I think that interest is only going to keep on growing. But beyond those specific inflection points, the easiest way to put it, it's all about the demographics. Again, the country is getting browner and blacker by the minute, as it should. And that's the reality. And you don't have to sell, for example, Hispanics on soccer. They grew up with it. And it's just more about making sure that the way that you are interacting and engaging with them is the right way. But there's a clear growing interest from that, younger, multicultural, diverse demographic in soccer. There was a Gallup poll that was made. I think it's going to be 2 years now, and they were just a general sample of sports fans in the country. And when you look at the general population, it was first NFL, second NBA, third MLB, and then fourth soccer. But when you look specifically at the 18 to 34 demo, NFL was still first with a sharp decline, tied for second NBA in soccer, and dead last it was MLB. And I just think that that's a reflection again of the demographic. Again, that 18 to 34 demo is more diverse and multicultural than the general population, and that interest in soccer and that affinity to soccer comes from a heavy influence on the Hispanic side.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing the numbers as well, because demographics are super important when it comes to these things. So looking back on La Liga North America, what's something that you think was missing? We self-critique ourselves the most.
I kind of starting a bit wider, what I think was missing in the international soccer world in the US specifically. And it was a lack of understanding of the market, of the demographics, to our previous point, and on the nuances that the US market has. There's been over the years a lot of international soccer leagues and teams that have looked at the US as a huge opportunity market and have tried to crack it, but it has never been with a humble approach, understanding that yes, it might be the largest media market in the world, but is as complicated as it gets, and there's not just one fan profile that you need to fit to kind of make it, but it's just highly fragmented, and there's a bunch of different positionings that you need to take into account. So I think that what we're doing, it's not that we are smarter than anyone else or that we have an unfair advantage for whatever reason. We literally just have spent a lot of time understanding the soccer fan in this country. We've come up with a very simple content-centric strategy to reach them, knowing that we don't have our actual games here in the country, and we've invested. You see a lot of of other leagues and teams that just take a WeWork in Park Avenue in New York City and put out a press release and saying we have a US strategy, and they're all expecting for fans to flock and brands to be knocking on their doors, throwing money at them, and it couldn't be farther from reality. We have now a team that's getting close to 20, specifically focused in the North American market, and we've invested a lot in just making sure that we have the right product with the right approach and with the right team. So it's not that we are geniuses or are doing something that just nobody else knows. It's just dedication to the market, humbleness in how you do it, and commitment.
Gotcha. Well, so I wanted to interrupt my questions because someone on the YouTube chat asked for a question, and it is coming from NTix08. The question is, what is La Liga's goals for growing the women's game?
So it's a great question. We, as a league, we don't control the women's league in Spain. That's controlled by the Spanish Football Federation. Having said that, there is a team within La Liga that's focused on women's soccer. And what we try to do is leverage the brands that of the men's teams that we do control in La Liga to try and give more and more exposure to the women's games. Specifically with Relevant Sports, our joint venture partner here in the US. They've invested a lot over the past 2.5 years in building Women's International Champions Cup, which is a mirror tournament to the traditional ICC or International Champions Cup that brings the top teams from Europe every summer. And as the league, we've tried to support that effort from Relevant and help as much as we can with our platform to help put the name of the Spanish women's game kind of on a more centered point of view. One of the other things that we've done is we just launched, for example, a show a couple months ago called The Conference Call, and it's hosted by Vero Boquete, Spanish female player now playing here in the NWSL, and Ali Long, U.S. Women's National Team. So even though it's not specifically related to the Women's League in Spain, we're using this to very recognized and talented women to actually highlight stories from other female players or other soccer players in general.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much to NTIX for that question. And I think that question was the perfect one to lead me into my following one, considering I'm assuming the strategy behind that content must have been super mind-blowing. Let's talk the strategy in North America as well. Share with us the successes and how it's been in the past 2 years. Why is it important to have content in both Spanish and English?
So the strategy that we have here in the U.S. is focused on 5 pillars primarily. The first one is tied to the TV rights. We want to make sure that our games are seen as broad as possible and that we're maximizing the value of those TV rights at the end of the day to distribute more money to the clubs. The second pillar is the content strategy, and I'll speak in a bit more detail about it. But when we started looking at the market and charting the strategy, it was clear that by not having the actual games here, we would have to rely a lot on the digital marketing that we could do of the league. And maybe it was my background and coming from from multiple media companies in the past, but I thought that instead of doing one-off marketing stunts here and there, the best way to consistently reach an audience and at scale was to do it through content. So we built an in-house studio, and we control the content for the region, and we develop content exclusively for the region. And I'll come back to that in a second. The third pillar, soccer development project. So we're here for the long run. What we have is a 15-year joint venture with Relevant Sports. We're not just here to renegotiate the next TV rights and leave. So we want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to help grow the game here in the U.S. We have a partnership with U.S. Club Soccer for coaching education. We think that it is as important to have youth participation as it is to having well-trained coaches that can actually continue training the youth in the best way possible. So we've been doing it for a number of years and training coaches all over the country. And separately, we supported last year, and our intention was to do it this year, but with everything COVID, it had to be postponed. But we were one of the main supporters of a platform called Alianza de Fútbol, which is the largest Hispanic amateur soccer tournament across the country, focused on Hispanics. Again, the fourth pillar, events and activations. This is usually kind of the low-hanging fruit that almost everyone tries to do, the watch parties here and there, and you have a big game, so you put together an event and you have a couple thousand people show up. For us, it was more important to build consistently an audience on key markets. So we identified 6 key markets that we wanted to hit on a consistent basis. Probably not surprising to anyone here: LA, New York, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, and Miami. And we ran a pilot actually last season. We did a partnership here in New York with a restaurant owned by a Spanish chef called Jose Andres. He opened a restaurant called Mercado Little Spain. And basically we did a partnership to have that be the home of La Liga in New York. So basically, if you're a La Liga fan, every time that there is a La Liga game, doesn't matter the day or the time, you can go to Little Spain and the game is going to be up on the big screens. And then on top of that, we did special events around some of the key matches. But what we really wanted to test and pilot was that if you are actually able to create a good experience for a La Liga fan that can go again on a consistent basis, doesn't matter if it's a 7 a.m. Saturday game or a 3 p.m. Sunday game. You start creating that habit probably in a better way than just running one-off events. We haven't announced it yet, but we'll be expanding that partnership as well in this new season, of course, with all the short-term adjustments due to COVID. But we've been getting creative, and the focus is still the same, making sure that we're building communities on the key markets that we wanna grow. And then the last pillar, we're trying to bring an official league match here to the U.S. It's been written and reported a lot, and we feel that it's something that would help elevate soccer in the country again, and even more leading to the World Cup. It has a ton of legal complications that I won't get into, but we feel very confident, and it's not a matter of if but when. We have, let's say, two very motivated partners both in La Liga and in relevant sports to make it happen. So that's definitely a plus. And then surrounding those 5 pillars, we have a very focused and specific sponsorship strategy. We want to make sure that everything that we do has a tie-in to a brand partner, not just for the business reason of generating new revenue sources for the league, but also because by partnering with the right brands that are already established in the territory, that helps also grow our brand awareness. So we have a few different partnerships, including Verizon, PointsBet, Fanatiz, and a couple others that we'll be announcing the next week.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for explaining the 5 pillars. And speaking of 5, the 5 regional sponsorships, how did you guys manage to find them? What's the process behind activations?
So the first thing, it took us a little bit of time, because usually the way that La Liga had monetized their inventory and their assets around the world was very, it was very basic. It was usually you have LED boards on the matches that were split on different feeds around the world, and you had that as the main asset that you were able to sell, plus IP and brand association to the league. But before we launched the joint venture here in the US, there hadn't been any partnerships done for the territory. So we really had to dig deep into the type of partnership and sponsorship deals that US brands were used to doing, and what were the elements of those partnerships. And it, probably not to anyone's surprise, very reliant on content and digital and social. So when we started building our strategy, we and decided to focus on the content piece. It was not just to create a deeper connection and engagement with an audience here locally, but also to create commercial assets that we were able to package and monetize in a more, let's say, US typical way. So it took us, better part of 6 months trying to figure out what the right packages were and how we were positioning the league, and then actually getting out to market. But it's paying dividends. We've been able to build really great multi-year partnerships, and I think that our partners are happy. They see the value on the audience that we bring, and also again the commitment that we have to the market. So again, it was a mix of understanding really well the market and flexible and adapting what was been done in the past.
That's great. Now we have another question which also kind of measures success. As you work to grow La Liga in the United States, how do you measure success along the way? Is it increased viewership, fan engagement, increased brand recognition, or something else?
It's a little bit of everything. the way that I personally hold myself accountable and the team is around the five pillars that we have, and then of course adding the commercial piece as well. We want to grow, of course, reach and viewership of the actual matches, so that goes with the TV rights. At the same time that we're growing the value of those TV rights, and that's probably easier said than done. Um, as you probably know, on the content side, making sure that we're reaching and engaging with more people in a more organic way. On the soccer development projects is making sure that we are every time taking a more active role in the growth of the sport. So I mentioned the partnership that we have with US Club Soccer. Pre-COVID, we had also launched an academy in Miami, an academy in Toronto, and we were in the process of launching an academy in Dallas and in LA. Of course, you know, this new reality kind of shakes all of that a bit. But the measure of success still is the same. It's just wanting to make sure that we're part of the growth of the game. On the events and activations, I think it's just making sure that we're bringing again the league, the clubs, and the players closer to the fans here, be it through friendly matches that we can get whenever things come back to normal, or creating spaces like the one with Chef Jose Andres here in New York, just permanent hubs of La Liga. And then finally, again, trying to make sure that at some point we're able to bring an official league match, again, as one of the main ways to have the fans here experience the real, competition of a real, going for 3 points type of soccer match.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to whoever submitted that question. And to close it off, final question, Boris, and thank you again for your time, and Shina for doing the back end stuff. What are some of the things that you've taken from your previous experiences at Televisa, Fusion, and Univision and applied them to La Liga?
So quite a few. Again, I think that understanding of the content world and how powerful it can be if it's used correctly.
Very true.
The understanding of the audience as kind of that guiding principle. If you have a disconnection in terms of what your audience wants or is asking for, it's going to be impossible to be successful. So you gotta really hear the audience and understand it and tailor your product to meet those needs. And then just the resiliency of having a ton of people tell you that what you're doing is stupid and crazy and you're never going to be able to do it, and actually proving them wrong.
Okay. Well, Boris, I was wrong. We have one more question. So
no rush.
Perfect. You alluded to it, the whole COVID-19. What has been the biggest learning that COVID-19 has provided? I'm sorry. What has been the biggest learning lesson post COVID-19 that La Liga has learned? Specifically, what have you learned since the restart that you'll try to implement moving forward? And this is from Anthony Pardo.
So, as the commercial office of the league here in the market, most of the times we take for granted how tough it is to put actually the competition and how much it goes into having the matches being played. We kind of get the product in its final form and do whatever we can do to showcase it and sell it and all those things. But when you have something like COVID that actually puts the production line at risk, that's when you really understand that all the work that's being done back there in Spain to actually deliver what they deliver it's incredibly complicated. It's just not just by the league, but the teams. A lot of the complications, for example, with players' contracts that were supposed to expire June 30th, and the season got extended to July, and what you have to do to actually make sure that the players are still in contract and compliant to complete the season, plus all the health and safety protocols that you need to follow. There's a lot that's put into delivering those 90 minutes. So that was kind of an important realization for us here. And the other thing, and I guess we were a bit lucky, again, since we had from the beginning focused more on the digital content experience. Our shift and our pivot was not that radical. I had already pivoted at the beginning from the live events, and the big watch parties to a more aggressive content strategy. So for us, it was more about doubling down on that strategy than actually shifting.
Gotcha. Well, sorry to say one more question. Well,
That's fine.
good. This is great, very engaging questions. So this question comes from Adam Spencer. Given the success of the Bundesliga in acquiring American players over the last 5 years, since it did TV, I'm not too sure what TV means, but what do you think that the league itself will begin to invest more in bringing Americans to La Liga?
I mean, for me, it would be great that there's more American players in La Liga. Naturally, the league has been a destination for Latin American players. You see all of the top, Argentinian, Brazilian, Mexican players, Colombian players have played in La Liga at some point in time.
Yeah.
So that I guess it's kind of the language and the popularity of La Liga in Latin America that has been kind of the case, for having that over indexing, let's say. What Bundesliga has done and the type of formation they have for young kids definitely plays very well for American players. But I'm just personally, as a soccer fan and as an American, excited to see probably this is the moment where we've had the most American players in key teams and playing key roles across Europe. So hopefully what you start seeing in Bundesliga, now actually seeing it in the Premier League, is something that you start seeing more and more across La Liga, Serie A, and some of the other leagues. We have a young American playing in Barcelona that actually made the first team appearance in the last match, Conrad de la Fuente. So we're excited about seeing the potential that he has. And now there's rumors of more and more players that are looking to make a switch to La Liga. So hopefully that becomes more popular as we go.
Wonderful. Well, if I'm looking over on this, and I'm going to go ahead and close it out. Boris, thank you so much for joining us in MIS, Minorities in Sports. Guys, you can follow China's brilliant creation, Minorities in Sports, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere that you could think that we are, we're going to be there. And thank you again, Boris, and lots of luck to you.
Thank you so much again for the opportunity, and congratulations again on all the great work that you guys are doing with Minority in Sports.
Awesome. Thank you again, Boris. Thanks, China.